Words have the power to start wars and to end them, to harm them, and also to harness. And the question is, how do we actually really get the grasp and the gist on what are we saying, when are we saying it, how do we say it, and to whom are we saying it? And today we are joined by somebody who has made that literally her profession. Anita Siek is here, and I cannot be more excited for this chat. Anita, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I feel like it's been a while. I'm so excited to hang out again and catch up with you, Patria. It's going to be fun.
I know it's been a little while, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all your insights and wisdom and gold nuggets that you're going to share, because I know you always deliver. No pressure.
No pressure.
But for those who haven't come across you, can you give us a little bit background as to how did you get into the world of copywriting and what got you fascinated with the power of words?
Ooh, okay. What got me fascinated with words? I'll start off there. I think it's the delicate choices in actually words and how it triggers different emotions and feelings that has me absolutely fascinated. So, like for example, I can be like, Patria, I'd like to work with you, versus Patria, I'd love to work with you. It is such a small, subtle tweak in language, but you can feel it's a slightly different feeling, you know? And I say the same with removing weasel words, words like can, might, could. These are all weasel words that weaken a sentence. So I think it's that fascinates me, how the smallest of tweak can actually result in completely different feelings and emotions. In terms of how I landed here, took a zigzag, took a freaking tumble down everywhere. But it was a very, very non-linear journey to get here. I used to be, actually studied law and psychology, social and cognitive psychology in university. I did the traditional thing and went into corporate and the government, worked as a lawyer, worked in policy, writing things people don't read until things go wrong. And I started Wordfetti as a bit of a side hustle, side gig back then. And it was just purely through me just loving words and loving the medium of words, if I'm to really distill it, to communicate and connect with people. And that was 6 years ago now. So 6 years into Wordfettying. And we're now a team of 5 incredible humans who are also word nerds. And yeah, we help brands that I like to say don't like to do normal stand out through psychology and words. And we do that through courses, we do that through one-on-one done for you. And also we do workshops, so custom workshops for corporates. So yeah, that's us. That's me.
Oh, yay. It's so exciting. And this is also, I mean, communication obviously has always been important, but especially over
Yes.
the last 2 years, it has taken another seat at the table because of all the changes and the challenges that we're facing, from cross-cultural teams to global dispersed teams to working more horizontally rather than vertically. So you have to talk to
Yes.
different people who don't have your background. Now, what are some of the basic communication fundamentals that we all need to be reminded of? Because I'm sure we might know them, but we are not always sure how to actually use them.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is I think when it comes to the heart of communication, we often put the lens on the wrong side. So let me explain what I mean by that. I think when it comes to communication as a business, as an example, you might be like, okay, so I need to find the words to cleverly describe what we do so that people get excited by it. And don't get me wrong, you do want to have people excited by it, but that shouldn't be where you start. That the heart of communication is actually less about you. It's actually more about the person that you're actually speaking to, and why should they care and why should they prioritize whatever it is that you're selling. Because when people say no to investing in something or a product or a service, it's not because, chances are, it's not because they're potentially never going to be a client. It may be they're not prioritizing it right now, which is a communication issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's a massive communication and messaging issue. So I think one of the at the heart of great communication is actually understanding the person that you're actually going to be speaking to, which sounds so obvious now that I say it, but I think so often we get caught up with trying to make things perfect, trying to make it sound awesome, making things sound intelligent and smart, that we forget that at the heart of it, writing to a grade 5 level is probably one of the best things. Understanding who you're actually talking to and why they should care, that's the other thing that's key. And I think the third element is really coming in with an intention, right? Like, is your intention to really create that awareness of what it is that you do? Maybe your audience doesn't know what you do. Is the intention to build trust with that person because maybe they're feeling wobbly with investing in something that you're selling? Or is the intention to kind of show them why you can actually help them with whatever it is that you are selling? So that's probably, three things I would say. Yeah.
Well, I love the answer, because in the end, my principle or the methodology behind the trust authority is all about how can you become the translator. So the technical knowledge is great, the credentials is awesome, but it's only the foundation. If you can't speak your decision maker's language, if it's the chair, if it's your client, if it's a recruiter, it doesn't matter. You've lost already. And this is where we see so many really talented professionals miss out on those opportunities because they cannot articulate themselves. And maybe you can give us some tips. Sometimes we've got it's so clear in our head what we actually want to say, and then in a second we get asked, so what do you do? It's complicated, or we don't know how to actually,
or you start justifying, right?
Yes. Why is this the case, and how can we get over this hurdle?
And this is when our brain goes into overdrive. It happens because our brain goes into overdrive. We're trying to find the most perfect way to actually distill what it is that we do. And we start to be like, oh, you know that thing? Yeah, well, that's what I do. I think how we go about that, at the heart of business, you are in the business of either creating a gain or eliminating a pain. I think if you're tuning in right now and you're kind of like, oh, I don't even know how to share or communicate what it is that I do or the value of what I do, I think start off with that question and actually consider what gain are you creating or what pain are you eliminating? And of course, connect the dots between that and your audience and start there, because then you're not just saying, oh, I'm a copywriter, like me, I'm a copywriter and I help you put words out there, like question mark. But you can actually distill that and be like, well, chances are when you are investing in a copywriter, you're not selling words. You're actually not selling the output of words. You're actually selling what that actually results in, which is, for example, more conversions, the ability to stand out. So that's the gain I'm creating, right? So if you can then connect the dots between you like what you do, your audience and what they want to do, and that's the glue of what it is that you do, then that makes it so much easier to communicate the value of what you do without you having to justify yourself.
Absolutely. And all of a sudden, it's not about us bragging or being too full of ourselves that so many are worried about. It's more about, oh my gosh, tell me more, because this is exactly what I'm actually interested in. And you're speaking already my language.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, we're talking the same language, which we are. Like it's one of those things where I think as soon as you shift that lens to actually understanding what at the heart of it you're actually selling, you don't feel salesy anymore. You're actually helping people you're solving a problem and you're helping people get there. So it actually feels exciting.
Absolutely. Having said that, it's not as easy as it may sound. Like we work with a lot of, say, CIOs or CTOs or data analysts or consultants in the cybersecurity space. And, everyone throws all the tech jargon at us and all the certification. And we're like, what does it even mean? How can we find out what kind of language do we need to speak to gain this trust?
Yeah, I love that question. So one thing came into my mind just as you were talking. So when it comes to things that are uber technical and I'm going to use my husband as an example. Sorry, love you. But he is like in a field where as soon as he starts talking, I'm like, okay. What do you mean? Okay. Like it just kind of zooms past me. And I think one way that if you are in a very technical field where you feel like it's like a completely different language, like I'm talking English, you're talking, German or something like that. Like one way is to actually find that middle ground and I love to use analogies here. So one way that you can really communicate what you do in a way that both sides can really understand is bring it to an analogy. So an example of that is, I'll use copywriting as an example again, but it's almost like if I was to say something along the lines of, I'm thinking on the spot here, but like the Rubik's Cube that comes before the words, that's what's important, right? Like if I'm really talking to someone about the importance of speaking to your customers and looking at data, doing research, doing customer insight surveys, which is key before you write any copy, I could dive into all of that and start like going to town about all the technical stuff. But I can distill that into something else that has a very similar meaning in terms of there's complexities to it. There's things that you've got to mold and change and tweak and massage. A jigsaw could be another thing that kind of wraps around that idea. But Rubik's Cube was the one that came into my mind. So you could then wrap that analogy that everyone understands. When you say Rubik's Cube, they know that there's a few things you've got to move around. It's a little bit challenging. There's a lot of different things at play you've got to consider. The Rubik's Cube, that comes before the words. And instantly you're able to be like, oh, I know what a Rubik's Cube is. And I get, like, I don't exactly maybe get everything that that person may be saying, but I get that there's a few complexities that come. So I think using analogies are a really great way to actually make things, one, more a little bit off center, a bit zig when others zag, but also two, it's a way for us to actually bring it down to something that people can actually easily consume and understand.
I love this tip, because this is in the end storytelling per excellence. Like when you say, so, you know, it's a little bit like, or you know, remember when it's like, oh yeah, so everyone's got their own image in their head. It's like, oh yeah, I know what it feels and looks like.
100%. It's bringing it down to like, because at the heart of it, it's we all tap into our memory bank, right? Whenever someone's explaining something to us, communicating something to us, our brain's like, there's like this little person that's just like, okay, let me just go into my memory bank and just see if like I've ever come across this. And of course, when it comes to something a bit more technical and you're talking to someone who is untechnical, it's like, no, do not, there is nothing there. So when we can tap into something that we do know and have feelings and emotions and understandings of in our memory bank, that's when we can create that level of understanding on the same wavelength.
Absolutely. Oh, excellent tip. Now, so many very technical professionals often fear that they don't get the credibility, or they are not coming across as trustworthy when you don't throw all the jargon and all the credentials at their decision maker. Have you ever come across that that fear before, that they are not seen as professional than a counterpart and another big four? And what would be your explanation for that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, looking back in my in the corporate arena that I was in, you throw in words like strategic, you throw in words like holistic, you throw in words like innovative, and you know, and it gets to a stage where, and there's actually been studies and research to show that these words have, there's words that almost have too many different types of meanings that you actually have no idea what it means when people use it. And strategic is a perfect example. Innovative is a perfect example. Holistic, or all of those buzzy words. If you really want to stand out and actually communicate in that way, you don't want vague. You don't want to open a can of worms where people are like, what does that actually mean though? So I think when we can actually come back to that and understand actually, and this is, I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I always come back to you've got to literally communicate it to like a grade 5 level. Make it as simple, almost cut half the words that you use when it comes to communicating, and definitely, you know, in a corporate setting, and also getting buy-in from executives and all of that, the more simple and the more you can connect the dots between what this means for them and understanding what they're trying to do. So if you're, again, I'm creating a scenario here, but it's almost like if you're pitching to, I don't know, a CFO who has a budget that he has to look at and he needs to have certain results, then realizing the brief that you put together needs to connect the dots to what that person wants to do, more so than trying to shove in buzzwords, if that makes sense. So it's like more about understanding what job is that person trying to do, instead of trying to be like, I need to try to put in all these buzzwords to sound professional in order to get, because that will just get lost in all of the, I mean, I don't know about you, Patria, but when I read white papers or research with all those buzzwords, I'm just like,
Exactly.
what do you mean?
And we're glancing over and we forget everything anyway. And if we feel silly or we don't even know what this whole conversation is all about, we associate with this other person, a time waster.
That's
they
it.
make us feel silly
Yep.
or dumb. So it's not going to go anywhere.
No, exactly. So I think at the heart of it, going back to understanding what we were talking about, like a little bit earlier on, which is what is that person you're communicating to? What are they trying to do? And communicating from that space as opposed to trying to look at it and shine the spotlight on you and be like, I need to sound professional. I need to make sure it's perfect. Because that's at the heart of it. That's what connection, communication, and words are all about. It's a tool for us to connect to each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, speaking of, it's a tool that connects us and it makes also people trust us. Like content marketing is a massive industry and one of the best tools to actually generate interest for you and get people to get to know you before they actually know you, which is amazing. What are some of the no-nos that we shouldn't necessarily focus on or that we actually need to avoid that could breach the trust? Is there something like that?
Ooh. I've got a few that's coming to mind. I think the first thing that is a no-no is regurgitation. So what I mean by that is, let's just say, I don't know, LinkedIn or Instagram has just launched something and literally they've talked about it and been like, yeah, this is what we're creating. If you're let's just say I don't know, social media manager or a content agency, you're simply regurgitating the same information. And this can happen too for technical experts where you're simply regurgitating the same content. And the reason why it's a no-no, it's not because it's bad that you're sharing the same amount of information, but I think when it comes to content marketing and when it comes to standing out and building trust, you're not building trust and you're not starting conversation by simply regurgitating the same information that I could have gotten on Google. What builds trust, though, are things that are not Googleable, which is what's in your brain, aka how do you feel about this new update, or how do you feel about this new, I don't know, update that LinkedIn or Instagram has, or insert whatever it is, has created. And I think a lot of people, this is where the hazard cone happens, where people are like, well, I don't know, like maybe I shouldn't, like who am I to, share what I think, and who am I to share all of that? But that is what builds trust. If you can open up the conversation about what you believe based on your experience, what you've seen, and why you believe this happened, or perhaps your insight as to where this is going to go in a few years, then this is where people are like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. Like, or wow, like I just got a bit of a glimpse into your brain. That's kind of cool. And I think it's such a missed opportunity when people don't share their insights like that and treat social media or rented platforms like LinkedIn and Instagram as an avenue for you to really share your voice and share your thoughts and share what's not Googleable, which is what's in your brain.
Oh, I'm so glad that you shared it, because companies realize now that they are sitting on a gold mine with their employees when they are sharing content. It's 10 times more likely that they're getting more reach and so forth. But then I cringe every time when somebody literally forwards a company update. 70% of executives said XYZ and they literally just forwarded. Oh my God, cringe moment every time. It's like, what does it even mean? Why is it interesting? What do you think about that? Nothing. There's no personality.
100%. 100%. You're bang on there, Patria. It's like, it's one of those things where it's a missed opportunity, because it's like when you want to build trust as a brand, as a personal brand or as an organization, that's what people want to know. Like, and it's interesting how it's evolved actually over the last couple of decades. I think this is definitely would have been a different answer. We had this conversation, a few decades, maybe two decades ago, because, we didn't have social media. We also had to have this certain persona we had to stick to, right? As an employee or even in a corporate arena to be seen as professional. But I think definitely in the last couple of years with definitely the rise of social media, with all the different elements, like Web3, or all of those elements, like people are wanting what's not easily found on just Google. They want something that's different. And I think that's what's comes back to why I feel social media was started to strengthen relationships and ideas instead of simply just sameness everywhere.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's a good reason for the push for diversity and inclusion, that we've got different ideas, that we've got people from different backgrounds, that they can come with a different spin on the topic already. They can really innovate, not just talk about it. And the same goes with social media content, just coloring inside the box. Nobody cares anymore. Like, it's such...
No.
This is noise. This is literally just adding noise to a very noisy world. And
that's it.
Better do nothing. I think it's still better than just moving
Actually,
on.
yeah, that's it. Better to not post if that's the case.
Yes.
Yeah, I always say it's better to even just focus on one post a week, a really great quality post, than doing one every single day, because you can just cross-pollinate that really great quality post.
Absolutely. Now, we have a very technical audience, from data analysts to software engineers to CTOs and so forth. And what we often hear is, well, but I'm just not good with words. How can we get better? A big question.
How can we get better?
Yeah, like, is this a thing at all?
100%. It's a thing. I think, coming back to my husband, he's one of those people too. And this is what I say to him, what I say to anyone who feels really, literally say, I'm not good with words. Well, first of all, let's talk about that, because when you say you're not good at words, like I say I'm not good at maths, when I say I'm not good at maths, literally anytime I'm faced with maths, I'm like, no, I'm not good with I'm not good with maths. So there's that bit where as soon as you say you're not good at something, you're going to find confirmation, the fact that you're not good at it. So I think it's important that we shift our thinking to what we believe words is all about. When it comes to words and copy and content, as what we're talking about in marketing and business and in a corporate arena, it's not what it was compared to what we learned in school. It's very different, in fact. It's not just about the commas, and don't get me wrong, there's an element of that, but it's not just about the commas. It's not just about, I remember back in school, you were given a word count, like 10,000 words. And it was measured based on how many words you could use. That is not the case when it comes to the corporate arena or business or brand, because the less words you can actually communicate an idea, the better. People's attention spans are short. So that's the first bit. What we were taught in school versus what is needed for us to actually communicate to one another in business and in life, it is quite different. But what I was getting at is, the one question I think is important for you to ask whenever you are stuck as a technical expert and you're like, oh, I still can't get my words out, is I want you to ask yourself this: what does your audience want to see? What do they want to feel? What do they want to know? And what do they want to read? Whenever you feel stuck as to what to say, what to share, what to write, ask yourself that before you write a thing, and actually consider the person that you're about to write this thing to or communicate to. What do they want to see, hear, feel, know, and read? Because, coming full circle to pretty much how we started the conversation, Patria, it's less about you trying to make this clever and construct the most perfect sentence, because that doesn't exist, let's be honest. It's at the heart of the communication, at the heart of actually getting a point across, is actually how can we find that connection point between us so that you can actually feel and understand what it is that I'm actually conveying. And I think that question brings it back home in a very easy way. Whenever even I'm stuck with what to say, and there are days that I feel stuck too, so I want to be honest, there are days when even though I do content and I write copy, there are days when I'm stuck, but I just come back to that. What does my audience want to see? What do they want to know? What do they want to read? And how do they want to feel right now? They feel like there's a buffet of information that's pulling them to do certain things. And well, if that's the case, let's continue that conversation, right? Because marketing and communications, it's a conversation. It's a conversation All you got to do is continue that conversation.
Oh my God. Mic drop moment right there. I love it. Because it's so tangible, and you can literally put the 4 quadrants together and just write down, where are they right now? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And what do they want to actually know from me? So it's not so much how much knowledge you can throw at people, but what do they want to get out? And, you know, you said our attention spans are so short. But even Einstein already said, if you can't explain it in a succinct manner and short, you haven't understood it good enough. And this is probably what we need to remember. Brevity is key.
Yeah. 100%. Yes.
Now, the last question, because when we say, okay, you know, I get it, I want to share my thoughts, I start creating content, maybe, you know, I write an amazing email or a blog post and it backfires. We get a negative comment, we didn't see that coming. What's a way to recover from that?
Yeah, this is a good question, because I have to answer it in 2 ways, because there's a side where, of course, it is, you know, it was a boo-boo and you said something that, you know, may have been inappropriate, and it was actually a boo-boo. And if that's the case, then I think that, you know, you've got to be human and actually just address it and talk about it, and you're learning from it, understand what you can learn from it. But I think there's the other side of the spectrum where, and this is interesting again because of the current era we're in, where because of the rise of social media and the ability and ease of being able to openly share your thoughts, which is beautiful, but also opens up trolls, you know, where you simply cannot please everyone. You simply, and I think that's also not the point of you sharing your insights. There will be people, and there will be people who will disagree, and that's great. People disagree. It's what makes our world so diverse and so different, with all of the different perspectives combined. So there's that side where you will get trolls, and you will get people who will disagree and not like what you're saying, not like who you are, not like what you're about. And you can usually feel that energy, which is not the nicest. But I think to that point, whenever that happens, and you know, I feel like as soon as you put yourself out there, you do have a target on your back. But I always come back to, I rather think of it as the one person I can impact, as opposed to, if I can impact one person by sharing what I want to share versus the potential backlash, I want to focus on that one person as opposed to that. Because when they react the way that they do, whether or not it is, you know, hashtag troll, then it's actually more of a reflection and story of, you know, their beliefs and opinions. Sometimes it's hard to cut and distinguish, but it's actually more on how they interpreted that and their background and their understanding and their perspective. It's not at you, it's at how they've interpreted that when faced with it's their interpretation of the story. But that doesn't mean you change your story, you know? So yeah, there's 2 sides to that, which is a little bit tricky. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Oh, I love the take on, because you're right. You can be, what's the saying? You can be the ripest peach, and there will always be somebody who doesn't like peaches. Like, don't try it.
Yeah. I think I think I wrote this on my Instagram recently. It's like you're responsible for writing your own story, but you're not responsible for how people interpret it and read it.
Oh,
you know,
so good.
Yeah,
Speaking
because
of,
you can't.
you can't, exactly, but you can teach us what we can and what we can't do. Tell us a little bit how we can learn more from you, what you've got coming up, and how we can work with you.
Yeah, well, I have a podcast as well called Wordfetti, which Patria is going to be hanging out with me on as well. For those who want to kind of learn the one-on-one of copy and communications, I actually do have a freebie, which is a 5 e-copy lesson. So it's every day I drop into your inbox with a copy lesson. It takes 5-10 minutes to consume, which you can get at wordfettigroup.com/freebie. So highly suggest diving into that, especially if you're like, oh, I don't know how to your words, translate like what's in here in a way that's easy to understand for my audience. So we dive into that, and we launch like a copywriting and psychology course twice a year. So that's called Wordfetti Awards. But if you're on the email list, you'll know all about it. So yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, we put all the links in the show notes, obviously, because everyone needs to get better with communication. If you want to progress in your career, if you want to build and grow your business, it all comes down to how well can you communicate what you've got to offer. So, Anita, you've been incredible. Thank you so much for all your insights, your wisdom, and for cheering on with all the fetties in the world.
Oh, Petria, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.